Why is it that so many good men find themselves trapped in relationships where they feel invisible, unheard, and completely disrespected? You give everything you have, you show up consistently, you try to be understanding and patient, yet somehow you still feel like you're begging for basic courtesy from the person who's supposed to care about you most. If you're watching this, chances are you've been there. Maybe you're there right now. And here's what I'm going to tell you today. There's a specific sequence of actions that will either restore her respect completely or reveal something about your relationship that you need to know immediately. But here's the thing. If you skip any part of what I'm about to share, the entire strategy falls apart. You've probably asked yourself the same question over and over. If I'm doing everything right, why doesn't she respect me? And I'm going to answer that question. But first, you need to understand the psychological trap that's keeping you stuck, because without this foundation, nothing else will make sense. Here's the truth nobody wants to tell you. Respect isn't something you can negotiate, demand, or earn through being nicer. But there's a deeper problem here that most men never recognize, and it's actually the real reason why being nicer pushes her further away. I'll explain that in a moment, but first, let me tell you what probably happened in your relationship. Think about it. When did you start accepting behavior you never would have tolerated before? When did you begin making excuses for treatment that leaves you feeling smaller? The moment you started prioritizing keeping the peace over keeping your dignity, you activated a psychological principle that makes disrespect inevitable. And here's what's crazy. She's not even doing it consciously. Early in your relationship, you had boundaries, you had standards, you had a clear sense of what you would and wouldn't accept. But then love got complicated. Maybe she tested those boundaries, maybe she had a bad day, maybe you thought being understanding meant letting things slide. So you made exceptions. You told yourself it was temporary, that you were being mature, that real love means compromise. But here's the psychological trap, and this is crucial because it explains why your current approach isn't working. Every time you accepted disrespectful behavior without addressing it, you didn't just teach her how to treat you. You actually triggered a deeper mechanism in her brain that makes her lose attraction. I'm going to explain exactly how this works, but there's something even more important you need to understand first. The reason most men fail when they try to regain respect is because they focus on her behavior instead of the root cause. They think the problem is that she's being disrespectful, so they try to address the disrespect directly. But the disrespect is just a symptom. The real problem is what you did that made the disrespect feel safe for her in the first place. And now you're living in a relationship where the person who's supposed to love you most treats you like an inconvenience. She dismisses your feelings, ignores your needs, speaks to you in ways she'd never speak to a stranger. The worst part, you've become so used to it that you actually question whether you deserve better. But here's what you don't realize. This dynamic is actually more fragile than you think. Listen to me carefully. You do deserve better. But here's the part that will change everything. You're not going to get it by continuing to do what you've been doing. You can't nice your way back to respect. You can't love someone into treating you well. But there is a specific sequence that works, and I'm about to walk you through it, step by step. First, you need to understand that respect starts with you, but not in the way you think. The way she treats you is often a reflection of how you treat yourself, but there's a specific trigger that makes this dynamic shift almost immediately. However, this trigger only works if you understand the psychological foundation I'm about to explain. Here's what most men get wrong. They think they need to get angry, they think they need to fight back, they think they need to demand respect. But that actually makes the problem worse because it comes from the same place of seeking her approval. The real solution is counterintuitive, and it starts with a principle that sounds simple but requires perfect execution. This means you need to get reacquainted with yourself. What are your actual values? Not the ones you think you should have, not the ones that make you look good, but the real ones that matter to you. What are your actual boundaries? Not the ones you wish you had the courage to set, but the ones you're genuinely willing to enforce. But here's the critical part. Boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. The next time she speaks to you disrespectfully, you don't smile and take it. You don't get angry and escalate. You simply say, "I don't accept being spoken to that way," and you remove yourself from the situation. But here's what happens next that most men aren't prepared for, and this is where the real test begins. She's going to test these new boundaries. She might get angry, she might accuse you of changing, she might even threaten to leave. This is normal. This is actually a good sign. It means you're disrupting a dynamic that wasn't working anyway. But the next 60 seconds after she tests you will determine whether this strategy succeeds or fails completely. Here's the crucial part that separates the men who regain respect from those who lose it forever. You cannot waver. The moment you back down, the moment you apologize for having standards, the moment you make exceptions to avoid her discomfort, you're not just back where you started. You're actually in a worse position because now she knows your boundaries are negotiable. But there's something even more important than holding your boundaries, and this is the part that most relationship advice gets completely wrong. It's not enough to just enforce consequences. You have to understand the deeper psychology of what's happening, because without this understanding, you'll enforce boundaries in a way that pushes her away instead of drawing her closer. Now here's what's going to happen. One of two things will occur, and you need to be prepared for both outcomes, because your response in either scenario will determine your future happiness. The first possibility is that she'll respect your boundaries and the dynamic will shift, but the second possibility is more common, and it's actually the one you need to be most prepared for. You also need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she might not be able to adjust to this new dynamic. Some people have become so comfortable with disrespecting others that they can't function in a relationship built on mutual regard. If that's the case, you need to be prepared to walk away. But here's the key. How you walk away determines whether you attract healthy relationships in the future. I know that sounds terrifying. You love her. You've invested time and energy and emotion into this relationship. The thought of starting over feels impossible. But ask yourself this. What's scarier, being alone and maintaining your self-respect, or staying in a relationship where you lose a little more of yourself every day? Here's something most people won't tell you. A woman who truly loves you will actually appreciate your boundaries. She'll respect you more when you respect yourself. She might not like it initially, especially if she's gotten comfortable with the old dynamic, but a healthy person wants to be in a relationship with someone who values themselves. The woman who fights you on basic respect, who punishes you for having standards, who makes you feel guilty for expecting common courtesy, is showing you exactly who she is. Believe her. But the woman who steps up when you step up, who meets your respect with her own, who appreciates the man you become when you honor yourself, that's someone worth building a future with. Remember, you cannot control how she responds to your newfound self-respect. You can only control whether you maintain it regardless of her reaction. You cannot make her treat you well, but you can decide that you won't accept being treated poorly. The goal isn't to change her. The goal is to change the dynamic by changing yourself. When you start showing up as a man who values himself, one of two things will happen. She'll rise to meet that energy and the relationship will improve, or she'll resist that energy and you'll know it's time to move on. Either way, you win. Because you get to be a man who respects himself, and that's the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have. Stop waiting for permission to value yourself. Stop hoping she'll suddenly see your worth. Start being the man who knows his worth, and watch how everything changes.